Today on the Cameron Journal podcast, welcome to episode 3 of the happiness series, as we're calling it, or why we should pursue happiness, which is up for much debate. I want to remind everyone that this whole series is in support of the summit Joe and I are hosting on July 17th and 18th called the What is Truth Summit, Refining Your Discernment in an Age of Misinformation. We have a lot of great speakers. I'm doing a keynote, Joe's doing a keynote. Wade Franson's doing a keynote. I've even found a lady who's going to do like internal breath work, like finding your internal truth sort of thing, which is very different than some of the in your head intellectual stuff that the rest of us will be doing. So that's going to be really exciting. So I want to encourage everyone to come to the What is Truth Summit. For more details, tickets, info, all that type of thing, head over to summit.suitmedia.net. And if there's for some reason you can't come, you're super interested, but the ticket price is just more than you can deal with, send me a message, email at cameroncowan.net, and I'll hook you up because I have a lot of free tickets to give away. And so does Joe. So if you're a Joe Atman listener person, because this is going to get posted on him too, and the ticket price is as out of your league or whatever have you, shoot me an email and we'll get you hooked up because we have tickets to give away because we're special. So, with all that being said, summit.suitmedia.net, head over and check out that. And we're going to talk about happiness today. And today's topic is very interesting because it's happiness during difficulty and depression. And I'm going to start right off by saying I am autistic, I have ADHD, and I am diagnosed with clinical depression. I also come from a extremely traumatized background of child CPTSD. And one of the things that we kind of figured out in episodes 1 and 2, as Joe and I were going through our usual arguments because we agree on very little most of the time, um, is that happiness is a state of being and that outside factors don't necessarily need to affect that. So today's episode is going to be a very natural continuation to what we came to in episodes 1 and 2, because difficulty is an outside factor. Depression can be an outside factor. So how do we maintain that state of happiness being um in all of that? And if you lose it, how do you get back into it? So I want to kind of start the conversation um and let's kind of maybe talk about you know, the difficulty depression part, and then we'll dig into some relatable stories and moments. So, Joe, hi. How you
Hey,
doing?
good. How
Hi.
are you?
Good. So happiness during difficulty and depression. Um, I think I'll start the conversation off with a question, and that is, you're a pretty, I would say, happiness state of being type of guy. Um, except for that one time you texted me and were kind of like, God, I'm starting to sound like you. And I'm kind of like, we hang out too much. And um, how do you maintain that in times of difficulty or depression?
Well, you don't. Um, when
Oh,
you're
well, that's the episode, everyone. Thank you so much. Like,
um, I mean, you can't force yourself into emotions, right? That's not an I think you're as a human being, I think you are constantly looking for an authentic experience or a recognition of an authentic experience. And when you're sad, you're sad. When something happens to you, uh, emotionally, intellectually, something on the outside world. But this is kind of what we were talking about last time, right? Is that
Mm,
we let the exteriority of the world penetrate our interiority. So we let things on the outside affect who and what we are with too large of a frequency and degree. And the whole premise of what we were talking about in the first two episodes kind of hinged on the fact that, or at least my argument was that exactly what I just described happens, is that again, what we take in affects what we are on the inside and who we are and how we react to things. This happens, I think, largely because of the fact that we as human beings don't have a complete understanding of who we are in reality. And our identity is frequently tied to um, that relationship that we have to the exterior world. Um, we were rejected by this person or by a company or by a situation or whatever the case might be. And then we internalize that and we say, okay, well, we're not good enough for some reason. The exterior world or someone out there doesn't accept who we are, then that affects us in some way. So that, and that was kind of, sort of my position as to, why we frequently sometimes feel unhappy or unsettled, is because we're looking at that which is not us for self-affirmation.
Yeah.
Um, right? Where if we had a better understanding of who, if we defined our own, controlled our own narrative, if we defined our own selves for ourselves, regardless of what the exterior world thought of us, said about us, I think we would have a very different idea about who we are. Except for that, and here's the other kicker, most of us don't do this work. Most of us don't do the investigative work of asking ourselves who we are, why we think the things that we do, um, why it is that it's even important to have the internal investigation in the first place. Most of us just go through it. We wake up, we're always reacting to things that happen to us um, in the world. We get today. I got up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a meeting. I got work starting at 9 o'clock. I gotta do this. And then at work, I've got X, Y, and Z things to do. So you're always reacting to those things. I got bad news. Oh, I'm reacting to that. This is a really, really easy trap to fall into. Really easy trap to fall into. Most all of us are in this trap, and are in this kind of reactionary mode. Um, my question to us is, can we get out of that, and can we be in a place where there's an anchor, even though the waves on the surface might be crashing on us and the boat might be rocking a little bit. Can we still have an anchor? And so to answer the question, can we still be happy in difficult times? Well, you can have an anchor of understanding of who and what you truly are, and your own definitions about yourself. But when the waves hit, it's okay to sway with them, right? It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. You have to have an authentic experience in order to get back to your authentic self. I mean, you have to let yourself feel the feelings that you have. Otherwise, you're not ever going to truly know and understand yourself. And then how can you have that anchor that I've just been talking about?
A lot to unpack there. Um, let me step through a couple things. Um, yes, I mean, life definitely is a bit of a treadmill. And every day presents a new set of issues and problems and things to solve and all this sort of thing. Um, and uh and that I guess my thing is having spent probably too much time thinking about myself, to be very honest with you, because I did therapy and spiritual practice, and I have written about so much of myself and exposed a lot of that to the public through the Cameron Journal, or I did a whole project where I confronted like everyone from my childhood, including my childhood psychologist, and kind of like terrible things were going on and you did nothing. Care to share why you did that? Um, all this type of thing, and then eventually said, "There's nothing more there. It's time to walk away. Like we got to close that chapter and we got to move on." Um, the bridge I've never found, and perhaps it's my own neurology or my own psychology, is I don't know how to not be affected by outside states of things. And like I don't necessarily have like that anchor you're talking about. I've never had that in terms of there was never a sort of immovable thing that sort of, was the buoy in the storm that kept me going in difficult times. Most of the time, like it's how well I am or am not doing. I can put on a great performance of it. I've done episodes of this show where my life was absolutely falling apart, but the listener would never really know unless they knew me very closely. Um, and and I've never figured out how to not be extremely affected by everything else going on around me. Like that's just never been a thing. And it's funny because in the years of doing a lot of psychological work, I realized that especially when you have parents with a certain psychology, all this type of thing, I kind of laughed at a lot of the things that especially my mom made fun of me for doing were things that she had trained me to do to be kind of like you get mad at me because I care about other people's opinions, but you always want me to care about your opinion. You get mad that I'm always emotionally regulating, I'm always reading a room, all this type of thing. How else was I supposed to navigate your emotions? Because Lord knows you were never going to say anything. And it was just kind of funny to be kind of like, oh wow, you're making fun of me for the very thing you caused. Ma'am, that's like Ford making fun of the Pinto. Like the call is coming from inside the house. And so it's very hard for me to not like if the world is not okay and the environment is not okay, it's like sending a bull into a china shop. I think the hard part is and the conventional advice I have been given and that anyone would give is that you have to stop outside things from completely destroying your own life every time they happen. My question is yeah, okay, sure. That sounds lovely. What a lovely idea. How? Because for me, and this is something that I actually ended up talking to with a kind of a romantic conversation, is like, like for me, I don't compartmentalize things very well. For me, everything is connected. It's more like a giant mobile or a web. So if there's a disturbance sort of in the universe, all of my non-local particles are affected. Like one drop somewhere ripples everywhere through life, no matter what is going on, sort of thing. And everyone's kind of like, oh, you gotta compartmentalize, you gotta separate, all this type of thing. And I'm kind of like, I'm sorry, my brain doesn't do that. Everything's connected. If something is wrong in my universe, everything is wrong until that problem is solved. And unfortunately, because of the autism, I tend to hyperfocus on that thing until it is solved. And especially if it's a problem that can't be easily solved in a short period of time, that then becomes its sort of own psychological distress that then begins further rippling out. And this is how the whole system comes crashing down around our heads. But I also feel strongly like I'm not the only one that suffers from that. I think that's a little bit more common than any of us really want to think or believe. But I also see your point that so much of happiness is so predicated on um having that place in a storm, not letting everything affect you. I just don't know how you do that.
Well, it's extremely common. I mean, I think it's probably more common than not, and it affects all of us. I don't think that there. I mean, maybe, there's some Buddhist monk sitting in a monastery up in the Himalayas somewhere where just nothing gets to him or her.
Yeah.
That sure. But as human beings, we're thrust into this world where we're constantly battling with, again, not only our emotions, but our ideas. And this really, if you know anything about me, this is all going to come back to the way that we construct our own consciousness, right? It's the ideas
Yeah.
that we hold within our own head. And here, it's wherever we give our focus to, that's where our energy is going to lie. Whatever it is that grabs our attention, that's going to get our energy. So if we're thinking about and our attention is on negative things, and negative things tend to be issues that that at least from the individual's perspective greatly affect us, whether or not that's true or not. I mean, you could be looking at, I mean, you could be a millionaire, food chain heir and
Yeah.
be focused on world hunger and be like, oh my gosh, there's so much hunger in the world, and or there's so many people dealing with this issue. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be, but you can let that affect you, and yet you have literally all the money and all the food in the world, right? Because of not only your capacity financially, but what you do for a living. And that's an extreme example. But what we focus on, what we give our attention to is what is going to affect us. And so if we have a general disposition of that, and a lot of times this is grounded and rooted for people in either faith or in a general ideology. In a general, we kind of talked about this in the previous episodes, a general disposition that some people are naturally inclined to. Uh, but again, it's all going to come back to the ideas that we hold, and the way that we've constructed our own minds, and the way that our consciousness is really aligned with what is, again, either happening to us on, or what's happening in the external world that we allow to affect us, or not. But like how and again, this is super common. So how do you get that anchor? I think is kind of the question, because again, if someone I love or care about deeply is hurt or affected or worse, I mean, yeah, that's going to affect me. I mean, how could it not affect you? Um, that said, maybe even the weird part about that is if it's someone or something you care truly about, that is a part of you, right? And I
Yeah.
think maybe, Cameron, what you're saying, maybe it depends on how you align with this, but there are folks that might feel that they're so connected to everything that, as you just mentioned, that anything that happens anywhere is going to be, affecting them in some way. However, and
Yeah.
here's the catch. If that's really true, I think that you would hardly be sad at all, because I think that there are by a million times, probably more goodness that's happening out there in the world and the universe beyond than there are bad things. I think again the will of the human. So again, if you're going to be one of those people that says, "Oh, I'm affected by everything," well, then you should be affected by way more positivity, because there's way more positivity out there than there is negativity. It's where you choose to put your focus on. That again, that being said, maybe something happens to someone or something that you care about deeply. That's a part of you, that really is part of your interiority. So how could you not be shaken by that? But you also, and again, have to remember that, well, this is, you don't have to remember anything, I suppose, but if the goal is happiness, which I don't think it should be, to be honest with you. I don't think the goal should be happiness. I think the goal should be understanding and a comprehension and an alignment with verity, with what is true and real. And I think once that happens, happiness is honestly a secondary, tertiary, even further down the road uh, thing. It doesn't even come in honestly necessarily to that that hierarchy of wants and needs. Because if you're aligned with what is really true, real, and actual, happiness is a natural. part and state of that. I 100% can tell you that. Uh,
Yeah, and for if people want to hear more about the concept of verity, you can check out Joe's book, A Philosophical War. We're not really talking about his book, but I'm going to mention it. A Philosophical War, Volume 1. It's on sale everywhere. Amazon, Barnes Noble, Target, Walmart, all those places. If you want a discount, Soup Media or soupllc.com. Um, but yeah, I mean that when we talk about aligning with verity and what's true and what's real, the first question that pops up in my head is who's to determine that? Because I'm always asking that question because I I find my due to the uniqueness of my background, I find myself in rooms where I am usually the only one of my kind.
but Cameron, we can all say that.
And
So you're giving yourself an
yeah.
excuse, to be honest with you. I'm going to call you out here. You're giving yourself an excuse. You're like, oh, I'm autistic, or all of my situation, or my childhood, or my trauma. Guy, we all have that. We're all human beings, right? So you can't you always use those things as a crutch. And I don't mean to,
No,
but we all
no,
got
but
trauma. We all got baggage.
what I am trying to say though is that when we talk about being in alignment with whatever things, the first question I always ask, because I'm usually the only one of my type, is who's determining that?
Precisely.
Who has
Exactly.
who are we going by?
Well, you
Because
figured it
often,
out. Good.
yeah,
You are.
oftentimes,
Precisely.
oftentimes what people think is a dyed in the wool absolute sort of thing, I can look and say, not even close, buddy. Like, there's lots of things people take for granted or think are immutable things that I'm kind of like, oh no, there's millions of
But
people who don't know that life or don't live that way or whatever have you. And people get genuinely shocked. Um, Sort of thing. And because of the rooms that I exist in sometimes, they've never met anyone that comes from a different enough background to understand why
sure.
someone would look at a situation and say, that doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily really align.
Totally. No, I
Um,
understand that.
yes. And so that's my first thing on that. Is like, well, who decides? And then we'll go from there. Um, but then if if happiness is not the goal, which I'm fine with, because I'm not a huge fan of happiness, I don't do
I mean, your
happiness.
goals can be whatever you want. Where I'm not, but I just think that. Oh, sorry, but
No, but I mean,
I'm just saying that your comprehension of what actually is should be the goal, and then happiness will be a natural byproduct of that.
okay, but then what? I mean, I guess then the question is like, what? Now we're getting
And again,
into
you
like,
determine, and like
yeah,
you said, who determines what actually is? You do.
yeah. That seems incredibly unreliable. I would also
But
say that's probably the point of religion. I mean,
well,
you
I
know,
don't know. But what I'm saying to unpack that, because a lot of people that it's people might be confused about that because uh, but it's not. It's actually the most simple thing in the world. You give meaning. We talked about this also, I think, in the last, although you and I talked so frequently about so many different things because
yeah,
of our work together that I don't totally remember. But I think in the last episodes we did on happiness, we talked about how you yourself are the one who determines what meaning is in any given situation. So precisely, who determines what reality is? Well, this is the unfortunate power of concepts and ideas and your own participation within consciousness itself is that you get to determine what your ideas are, what your relationship to truth and reality and verity actually is. I could tell you that there's probably no actual objective thing necessarily out there. There's that reality itself is a participation with. It's always a participation with. So what do you bring to your end of that participation? You have to decide. But if you come to it free of ideas, this is what I'm saying. If you come to
yeah.
it free of ideas, concepts, notions about what the world is, and just see things and see yourself for what it and what you are, you will be aligned with what is. You will have a participation with, and in that participation, uh, again, happiness will be a natural byproduct of it because this whole entire thing, it's all made of love, care, uh, um, a symbiotic relationship with everything, and you don't have to have religion. You don't have to have spirituality or some sort of lofty vision of the world. I mean, yes, we've codified all of that stuff into religions and into spirituality and all that, to give us a guidepost for it, but you don't need that to see and understand it. The answer, the truth, the reality is there. You have to strip away your own ideas about things in order to see it, however, is what I'm saying. And that is a really difficult thing for people to do um, because most of us come to life with all of our ideas, all of our baggage, all of the things that make us who and what we are, and keep them as we're trying to discern and look at and see, digest, feel, be with what actually is. We take too much of ourselves into that. And here's a really good example. When you're just looking at something beautiful, just you, anything, it could be a painting, it could be a mountain, it could be a person, you forget yourself. You're just looking, you're just observing that thing or hearing something or get an idea about. There's no you involved. There's no you. There's just the observation of the participation with that thing in its almost universal actual form. And that is what I'm saying and it's a really difficult thing to do. It's impossible for all of us to do it, given the way our consciousness is constructed currently as human beings. But what I'm saying is if you are able to observe more and more of your life in that way, getting rid of yourself, you see something beautiful, you think, I mean, anything, any news, anything that comes to you, if you're able to just observe it, what will be there? What will you have? It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it
Yeah.
actually is
No,
very
no.
easy. It's actually the easiest thing ever to do. You do it automatically all the time. It's just we've learned a totally different way of doing and being.
Yeah, that's yeah, I don't think I've ever I don't think I've ever done that or known that. Um I think I think part of the problem, and this kind of gets into the broader question of, rates of depression are spiking, rates of anxiety are spiking. We have the male loneliness epidemic. Oh no, we have the female loneliness epidemic. Oh no, we have, social disconnection, especially coming out of COVID, all of these things. And it seems like, especially in, weird countries, Western educated democracies, the malaise is running deep. Um, in a way that it isn't necessarily a lot of other places, and people will blame every symptom. Oh, it's a lack of faith, it's a lack of family, it's a lack of community, death of third spaces. They'll write about the economics of it. Lord knows I have all this sort of thing. And I will say for my own self, I find most day-to-day reality to be incredibly disappointing. That's why I call myself Cameron the Disappointed. Like, nothing really ever meets expectation. It's never really quite what you think it's going to be. Um,
Well, no
and
wonder you're depressed. I mean,
yeah,
there you go.
that just ends up with a constant low level bit of disappointment that, like, when you're young you don't really notice, but as one gets older it starts to pile up. Um,
But
Sort of
why
thing.
have those expectations in the first place, Cam? Like, why do you, and I'm not asking that critically. Why do you have them? I mean, if you
No,
can
no, my
examine
mother's
that.
been asking me that since I was like 6, and I've never
Mhm.
come up with a satisfactory answer. For me, they just are. Like it's like
Mm,
air. It's
no,
just there. It's
no, no.
when something comes in, my brain immediately generates 10,000 variables of how it could go and how we'll feel about that and all this type of thing. And then it becomes a pick a card, any card scenario sort of thing. And whatever it is you think it will be, or you think you will feel when it happens, it's usually not that. It's usually something different. Now, in spiritual practice and meditation, most wisdom traditions will tell you, to accept things as they are in their existence rather than trying to put stuff on them, sort of thing. Um,
I
but
just
people
spent
always
five
say,
minutes telling you that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, see, I'm looping back around to you. This is how we're getting back to, yeah, that's, yes, thank you. Well, that's how we get back to you. Um, and we'll say that, and then all this sort of thing. The Buddhists would be the first to say, expectations are the source of suffering, let it go. All this is a whole thing that the people do. For my own self, I don't really know how to do that. Never
Mhm.
have been able
And
to
that's
do that.
fair. That's
Again,
okay.
mostly because the minute something comes in, my brain immediately sets to work creating 10,000
Hmm.
variations and 10,000 scenarios
Yeah.
and 10,000 ways to feel about that. But I also, looking at the broader societal question, it seems like and I realize like my weird expectations of things are kind of my own problem. I do find as I'm getting older, I tend to do that a lot less than I used to. I think because we have more data, and so they're getting more realistic as I'm getting older. Um, we're less prone to fights of fancy at this stage of life. But it seems like in our society, in our world, happiness has simply left the chat. And it seems like the world is falling apart. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket. I can look historically and say, actually, you'd be surprised. We sort of thing.
Right.
And I also blame awareness. We know a lot more about what's wrong in the world than we used to. Because we used to have the evening news and newspapers, and now we have social media. So if it's happening on the planet, we're aware of it. Our brains are not wired for that level of global awareness. Our brains are wired to be aware of the problems of about 150 to 200 people. And that's about it. We're not wired to deal with the problems of 8 billion people, like at all. Um, and so, but it just seems like happiness has left the chat. And I think it's a combination of all of the things that people mention, but I think the biggest one is expectation. When you're young, people tell you things. You start to expect certain things, certain opportunities based on your background or not. You start to construct a mental model of what you think your life might be, could be, and how possibly to get there. And it seems like there's a whole lot of people who, for whatever reason, those things have not occurred, and we sort of have this societal malaise. I also think it's because we lack a common story, and story is very important. That's another show. But humans need a story to conceive of reality. If we don't have it, we literally don't know how to conceive of reality because it's the only tool we have. Um, there seems to be this very general malaise. I think a lot of it has to do with expectations. So I would say, and then we gotta go because you gotta go. Um, what is, why do you think society is in so much of this malaise?
Well, I don't know that it is. I mean, on the whole, or I don't know that it is like that's your definition. First of all, let's understand that's your definition of it, right?
Yeah.
That it's in a malaise.
And the World
I
Health
don't. I'm not sure
Organization,
that I
but
accept that. I mean,
yeah.
on what, on what grounds would I accept that? Yeah, I can totally see that, technology or just the way in general that the world is right now maybe lends itself to more isolation, to more difficulty, than again, or just different kinds of difficulty that maybe were in place previously. I mean, you even mentioned it yourself. I mean, I think probably life in, the 13th century had its own challenges that we think nothing of today. Um, So, again, what's your definition of that? I'm just not sure that I see the world like that. And again, it just that's what because to be honest with you, I don't have a definition of the world, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not comfortable saying that the world is in any way, shape, or form one thing or another because to label it, anytime you label anything, it becomes dead. It's dead. It's done. So that's a definite. That's your definition. That's what it is. And that's not true. That's just not what it is. Again, coming back to what it is, things that are continue to be. They don't die. Nothing dies. Nothing. Only ideas. Concepts are the only dead things. Ideas are the only dead things. This is that way. That's a statement. It's dead. This is that way. There's nothing else. There's nothing else that's true. So when you make that statement, you're killing the actuality. And that's exactly what I've been saying here. When you make a statement, this is that way, that is this way, whatever, you've ended the discussion. You've said here's not only my idea, but my thought about the reality of the world. And how can you see anything from there? Or regardless of, I might say, well, I think the world is actually in a great, wonderful, beautiful, fantastic place, Cameron. I totally disagree. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I don't have a definition. I don't know that we can make a definition of the world. We can look at particular things and it can point to uh, certain things that also then unfold in other things in other ways, and we see other things. But that's what I'm saying. Reality continues. Reality evolves. Reality just keeps going. Where ideas, concepts, death stops. But there is no actual death, really, unless you stop seeing it. And the participation with phenomena is completely and totally contingent on consciousness and on the way you see things, on how you choose to see things, how you choose to interact with things, how you choose to come up with either having a mental construction or simply observing. And so do I see the world in that particular? I mean, I see that, yeah, okay, there's war, there's always been war, there's famine, there's always been famine. I'm not saying these aren't terrible things. They are. Am I ready to make a grand proclamation about the way that things are? No. I mean, first of all, I don't know. And you just said yourself, I mean, I don't know this to be true either. But this is more of a scientific thing I mean, I'm just, our brains are only wired to deal with 100 and some odd people or thing. I don't know, but that sounds more accurate to me, at least in my experience. I can't take on, I mean, you see terrible shit on the internet all the time, like every time you log on to it. Can you be, I mean, I guess you can, something can linger with you, but should it affect your entire experience? And not your entire experience, because your experience again starts and ends with your definition of what is and what you've taken in, what you've observed. You have then a definition about that, and then you're going to have a reaction to that based on your definition. That's what all of this starts and ends with is your own definitions, how you see the world. So I wouldn't define the world in any way, shape, or form with one broad stroke. Um, uh, do I see terrible things? Absolutely. Um, but when you say this is a terrible thing, well, I mean, World War II was a terrible thing, wasn't it? And yet it led to a lot of good things, which then led to a lot of bad things, which then led to a. Do you know this? Do you know the Zen koan of the farmer's horse?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Do you want to tell people about what it is?
No, you
Um,
go
or-
first.
so there's a Zen koan, and Zen koans are stories. They're like Zen stories about that have they're like a fable kind of, but in a very Zen way. And there's a koan about the farmer's horse, and the farmer loses his horse, and And the neighbor hears about it. He goes, "Oh my gosh, this is such a terrible thing. You lost your horse." And the farmer says, Maybe so, maybe not." The next day, the horse comes back with another horse, with a mare. And the neighbor comes back and goes, "Oh my gosh, we thought this was a terrible thing. The horse ran away. That was bad. Now the horse brought it back another horse. You got two horses. Now it's great." Farmer says, "Maybe so, maybe not." The next day, trying to tame the mare, the farmer falls off the dang horse, breaks his leg. The neighbor comes back. "Oh my gosh, this is so. The horse was gone. That was bad. Then it came back with another horse. That was good. Now you fell, you broke your leg. That's bad." Farmer says, "Maybe so, maybe not." The next day, the king's army comes recruiting all the eligible men in the region for the war. Of course, the farmer can't go because he's got a broken leg.
Broken leg, yeah.
What I'm saying is, when we define things as good, bad, anything, anything, it's impossible to do because you don't know the totality of the actual experience. And I'm saying, just go with it, just do your best. Uh, but observe. Don't make definitions about things. Don't say that things are one way or another. It will absolutely lead to unhappiness. And what's worse, what's far worse, and this is what I would say unhappiness actually and ultimately is, it will lead to confusion.
Hmm. I want to quickly mention about the Zen story. There's a great author named Regina Linke who was on this show, Taiwanese American artist, and she does a children's version called The Goat Herd Boy that it reinterprets and retells a lot of those stories. And if listeners are interested in more of that, they should go check her out because her stories are amazing. And she also has an adult version that's on sale as well, which is a lot of fun. And it is. I'm old enough to know that a lot of things that in the time and the moment seem like the end of the world were not, and things went on. And sometimes you're right. It saves you from something else, diverts you from other danger, and that's a perspective that comes with time that we do not see in the moment. That's the one thing I remind myself of a lot is that all of the perspective on this will be different a year from now. It will be even more different 5 years from now. And I tell people that, in time, this will change. Someone asked me one time, and it wasn't a public event. It was a private event, and so I'd been particularly vulnerable on some aspects of myself that I wouldn't ordinarily do in a public forum. And someone said, "Oh my God, how do you live with that?" And I said, "Well, to be very honest with you, the only thing that helped was time." When I was 24 years old, I asked a spiritual practitioner, I said, "How do you live with something that's taken up half of your life?" And he responded and he said, "One day it won't." And that was very unsatisfying at the time in the moment. But he wasn't wrong because now it only occupies less than a third, actually. It's about to be down to a quarter here in a couple years. And it is much less potent. There are some things only time solves, like getting distance from it, getting perspective from it, understanding how that experience fit into the greater, into the greater story. Um, I think this is hard to do in a day and time when the algorithm is geared towards outrage and is meant to have us in this sort of constantly emotional response state that is very unnatural. No humans have lived in this level of emotional potency all the time as we do now. And I think that's part of to your point, I think that's part of the problem with the depression, the anxiety, the rising loneliness epidemic, which was identified by the Surgeon General as an epidemic, the loneliness problems the World Health Organization has identified, the anxiety, all this sort of thing. I think it is because we're always supposed to be, expecting and reacting and having an emotion about things that really don't affect our everyday lives. that don't really are not really with us where we live, in the things that we have to handle, in the things that we're given to do. And even in our own lives, there is that certain Zen state of understanding change is constant, things come and go, things happen, all this sort of thing. If you want to stay sane in all of this, you can't let every small thing interrupt the flow of where you're going, what you're doing, what you're trying to do, whatever have you. If you get affected by every small thing, you're gonna go mad. Um, and I will say that I definitely, and I can verify that that's true because I think I've gone mad because every small thing, you know, ends up being affected. Um, and that's, yeah, it's a very odd place, with the only real advice being, I think, when it comes to the world, to focus primarily on yourself in your local area. Don't get too engrossed in the bigger events going on. But also, and I don't really know how to do this, to try to get to that state of not assigning a definition to everything, which for me that's a lost cause. Um, and also to not look at every event in its singularity, but in the total kind of flow of the story. Um, I think I'm probably a little bit easier at the flow of the story thing than I am at not labeling and categorizing things, because I like everything to be, that's that thing and it goes over there. That's that thing and it goes down there, sort of thing, rather than just kind of enjoying the jumble of it all, sort of thing, and letting things continue to live and be without trying to confine them into something that I can understand and label and put away. Because for me, it's closing a loop. Like for me, it's like, okay, that's what that was. That's what it is. In the jar, on the shelf, done, closed loop. And it feels like to not do that feels like I'm leaving every loop open, every possibility open. It's like if you left all the valves in a car open, you never get any compression, never go anywhere. That's what that feels like to me as you're describing it, is we're just letting everything be willy-nilly. And we're just standing there kind of observing and doing our thing in the midst of whatever it is that's going on around us. And that's, yeah. I'll own that that's a very uncomfortable position to be in. That's not where I
Sure, it would
live.
be. Yeah, it would be. Yeah, I mean, of course it would be, Cameron. I mean, everything that you just laid out a confessional of basically as to why you're unhappy, and yet you acknowledge it. But from where I'm standing, you just refuse to do anything about it. You say, "Well, that's just a non-starter for me," or that's just not possible for me. Well, so you've just done exactly what I said you can't do, is you've given yourself a definition about yourself and say, well, I'm just not capable. Well, that's true because of that, because that's your definition. If you were to change your definition of yourself, man, would things turn around for you. If you would allow yourself to just observe yourself and see what you actually are capable of, I'm going to guarantee that where you were 5, 10, 15 years ago was in a much more difficult place than you are now. You just admitted as much as yourself about the person controlling your life. I mean, if something or someone is controlling you, you're going to have a more difficult time in life. And yet, you said time, which is something I'll get to here in a moment, gave you a little bit of of perspective and distance and capacity to digest and free yourself from whatever it was or whoever it was that was keeping you back. So again, if you define yourself as a certain way, that is what will be true, because that's your working definition, and that's what you will have to work with. The other thing that I again want to just say again quickly about time is that it actually takes no time. It actually doesn't take any time at all. It's okay if it does take time, but it doesn't have to. Again, what happens is that the time that happens and things just naturally occur. No, it's your perspective. It's the ideas that you have about the thing that you are letting influence you. It's not the time. It's that you've had to digest it. You've digested it. And so it's not that oh gosh, you just it and yes, I'm not saying that things don't take time. Well, I am saying that things don't have to take time. They sometimes do because we need them to, because we need to have a process by which we can go through this and be angry and be sad and be upset and struggle with it and deny. I mean, what's the what is it, the 7 stages of grief or whatever. I mean, it's a process, and frequently things take a process for us, but they don't have to. If you have, what really changes in all that is your perspective. And what's at the end of all of that? Acceptance. And that's exactly, dude, what I am saying is once you reach acceptance, once you just see that things are what they are, yourself included, all this other shit is moot. It's all moot. Happiness, your pursuit of anyone, just see things as they are. Don't have definitions about stuff, and you will be happy. It's just a byproduct of it. Because you'll have accepted things as they are.
That still somehow seems so disappointing.
That's your definition of it. That's your definition of it. I don't know how I could
No,
just tell
no,
you
that's
and give
good.
you the
Yeah.
literal ingredient and formula for how to do this, and then you just said it's disappointing. I literally just told you how to do it, and then you said it's disappointing. At some point, that's on you, guy.
No, no, I agree. No, no, absolutely.
I just told you how to
Um,
do it.
no, I
So
know,
so and that's fine.
I
And
always
Cameron, it's
own it
fine that
entirely.
that's your definition. That's disappointing for you. That is okay. Why is it why? And you don't have to figure this out right now, but you do have to figure out why is that disappointing. I literally just told you how to do it.
Yeah.
Why is it disappointing? You don't have to answer that now, but that's a question that you have to figure out in order to well understand more about your vantage point.
No, no, that was no, that's what I was going to say is it was a funny place to end because I was acknowledging the fact that no, I think that was that whole idea of just seeing things as they are, and my first reaction to that is just kind of like, oh, that's rather disappointing, isn't it? Like that's no, I'm observing my own reaction and somewhat agreeing with you. But we're at the we you've
Stop
got
the
to go.
presses.
Yes, you've got to go in a
Cameron's
minute.
somewhat agreeing with me. I'll take it.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
will
but
take it.
you've got to go, so we've got to bring this to a close. Um, this was a interesting journey on this one. Don't know that we really got anywhere, but we had an interesting journey. So, in the next one, we'll talk about the happiness index in Bhutan, which is exciting. So this is episode 3 of the happiness series. My name is Cameron Cowan. That's Joe Atman. Reminder about our What is Truth Summit in July 17th and 18th. Summit.suitmedia.net. Check that out, where we're going to be talking about refining your discernment in the age of misinformation, which some of those sidebars that I said that's another show, and we get into algorithms and outrage and the emotional state that everybody is kept in things social media. That's what we're talking about that. So if you're interested in those things, those branches, that's come to the summit. We'll see you in July. The link will be in the description. But this is episode 3. We're halfway done with the series. We've got 3 more to go. And keep an eye out on your podcast feeds because they're all coming out before the summit in July. So thank you, Joe, for coming to episode 3, and we'll see you in episode 4.
Happily.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter, and we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you.